Hey, welcome to Talking to Tom with Jon Adams. I got caught in the middle of sips. You know, you got to clear your throat before you start talking. Otherwise, you'll be smacking and you get cotton mouth. I am very, very excited for the show today. Let's start at the top. Last week I had Commissioner Pepcorn on my show.
Hey, you got it right.
And yes, first of all, I want to apologize to Commissioner Pepcorn because 6 times last week I called him Commissioner Kolpak. And whereas I'm still new in the game of radio, that's just, you don't do that. And I'm going to blame it on my meds, Tony.
Okay.
You know?
I
wasn't medicated. I was excited, but still, out of respect, I want to apologize. I do, again, want to thank him for coming on. But if you're watching on TV or I don't know how you watch these things.
YouTube.
Facebook, whatever.
Live.
To my left, I have a former commissioner, former radio host, Tony Gehrig. And one of the reasons that I have him on the show today is there was a lot of information that came down the pipe last week. And going through my show, I recognized some inconsistencies in the things that were said by Commissioner Pepcorn. Okay? And like I said before, this show is about bringing you the information so that you can make an informed decision. So I have a list of things that I want to talk to Tony about and get his take on it as a former commissioner. Also, I want to discuss the things that I thought were important during the interview, like DEI and the Engagement Center, and what do we do with these people? And we will call them displaced people at this point, okay? So that's what we're going to do, but at the top of the list, if you're watching on any sort of thing where you can see my face, I have a Vikings tight tee on. And you can only see it from the chest up, so I look pretty good, see? But we have to take our hats off to Sam Darnold. He wasn't seeing ghosts this week. The defense, there were some things I didn't understand about the defense where they had some free runners through the defense, but that's okay because in my theory, the first 3 games are preseason anyway because most of the starters don't play in the actual preseason. But I do like what I saw. I was amazed at the fact that maybe the Giants' defensive line is just that terrible, but did it seem like, and Big Game James, you can comment on this, did it seem like Darnold had a clean pocket to the likes of which we didn't see with Kirk Cousins?
I would say it seemed like everything was pretty clean for the offensive line. I thought that even being down T.J. Hawkinson and also Jordan Addison for the back half of the game, you could tell that really for the first time since he's been drafted, Jalen Naylor looked healthy in the receiving corps. He got that 21-yard touchdown on that Justin Jefferson decoy. I'm still a little bit nervous about Aaron Jones. He looked really good. He had 94 yards rushing on 14 carries and a touchdown, but over the last couple of years, the issue has been getting him to be playing football once Thanksgiving and deeper in the season comes. And so I think trying to limit him a little bit more and trying to get Ty Chandler involved in the offense a bit more would be very beneficial for this team come late October into November and even December. But you know what? Winning a game in week 1 like that, no matter how good or bad the opponent is, to be 1-0, only 16 teams can say that, and we may chop down a few more this upcoming weekend. So you got to be happy with the outcome, especially with, I think, the alarm bells that were sounding after a couple of injuries in the secondary happened, and even the injury to J.J. McCarthy, who more likely than not wasn't going to see the field for the first half of the season, regardless of what happened anyways.
Right. Well, first of all, to see Ty Chandler in there, I thought he should have got a lot more time last year. And I like the fact that he played – it seemed like he played almost half the game, which load management for running backs it's paramount these days. You know, I mean, I don't know any team that goes through the season with a healthy running back. So that's my Vikings update. I'm happy. You know, hopefully we can keep this going for the whole season. I don't see any speed bumps. I don't know why we can't go undefeated and run the table and just, just win the whole thing.
You are a Vikings fan.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. So let's do the week in review. So at the top of the list, I have the Bison player incident. I know everybody has got to know by now about the gunplay that happened at a party. And I was talking to a friend of mine, Ray Qualavog, and he said, why are they dismissing this kid? And what happened to second chances? And I thought for a second, and I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? Yeah, why not give this kid a second shot?
Is that a pun?
No.
Okay, well, he only shot once, right? So
Yeah.
into the house, Jon Adams.
That happens.
Okay, it's one thing to shoot up in the air. That's stupid enough. But he shot at the house and almost hit a guy. If
Okay.
the reporting is correct, that's what I read in the paper. I'm assuming that's correct at this point. But if that's the case,
Well,
that's
see, I don't know much about it, and I was being a little flip about it.
Right.
But at the same time, people make mistakes.
absolutely do.
And the law is going to
Yep.
to play out how it's going to play out. But it seems to me in a large degree when we get these athletes on campus and they do have issues, which is the broader issue that I'm talking about, that it's like, hey, they missed an opportunity. They should have never put themselves in the situation they're in. And so I'm like, okay, so what happened to teaching and guiding these guys
Sure.
instead of being a throwaway product?
So I think that he's definitely going to get charged with something. He's definitely going to be found guilty of something.
Yeah.
And once he's paid his debt, then I agree with you. After you've paid your debt to society, which is what a punishment is for a crime, that's your debt. I think then, yes, you're right. You should be able to find a job. You should be able to go back to school. You should be able to play sports, those type of things. If you've proven that you've learned
Right.
and been punished properly, then there you go.
Well, I watched the comments that people had.
Oh yeah, well,
And-
you don't
and the
want to do that.
The vitriol was
Yeah.
just, he threw away a perfect opportunity and all this and that. But Tony, we were young once,
Yep.
and I said the only difference between me and some people that are in trouble is that
Smartphones?
I knew when to leave the party.
Right.
That basically
Yeah.
that sums up my college career.
I
And
think-
sometimes I didn't know when to leave the party, but
Yeah.
it speaks to a larger thing that what has happened to our society that we don't forgive and that we don't look at, hey, you know what? Let's give some people a break.
Yeah.
I think it's funny because we got Donald Trump who's done.
Oh no, you're gonna tie this to Trump?
I'm just saying all the things that he's done, we've managed to forgive him so much so that 40% of our population thinks that he should be our next president.
Well, I think it's gonna be more than that.
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I guess I should tell you now that I'm voting for Kamala.
Oh, okay.
Yes. You're not going to ask me why?
I think we know why. No, why? Tell me why.
I want change.
What? Okay, that's the one that really grabs me is change. She's in office right now.
No.
I'm not. I don't care if you vote
She's
for her.
not,
That's
she's
totally
not
fine.
in power. Vice presidents don't do anything. They never have. But now all of a sudden we're making it a point to say, she should have done this, she should have done that. That's trash. No vice president has ever done anything of real significance. Name one.
Every vice president.
Name one vice president that has done
Gerald
anything.
Ford,
Sure.
right? I mean, he became president, right?
Okay, that's wrong. I said of substance.
Yeah. Okay. No, but every vice president that runs for president, they say two things. One, I was in the room making the decisions with the president for everything that went well, right? Number two is, for everything that went bad, I'm not the one in charge. You can't have it both ways. So
Sure
either
you can.
she's in. Sure,
That's
you
the
can.
game. Hey, listen, that's the game we play.
At least you're admitting it.
If you've got enough money, Tony, you can flip-flop, right? We saw it yesterday. There was a little flipping and a flopping at the debate, right?
I don't think either one of them did particularly well.
I wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I wanted to hear more about what they were going to
Yeah.
do. I want my politicians to stand on their platform.
Right. It was a lot of jabs and punches, and he wasn't looking at her, and she was giving him the stare down, and it's just it was weird. I don't know.
You know what I think it was? Is that Trump has been known to go after
Right.
people and jab them and do all those things. So she was beating him to the punch.
Yep.
And what was surprising is that he didn't go in like he usually does.
It's
and that was
I think
odd.
it's different for a woman. I mean, say what you want to say about that, but most people don't like to see a guy go after a woman like that, because when it's with Jeb Bush, it's kind of funny, right? When it's Rand Paul, he makes fun of his haircut. That's kind of funny. If he would have made fun of Kamala Harris's haircut, I think that'd be a problem. You know what I mean? So
Why? I mean, if he calls what's her name Pocahontas and all these different people, and all of a sudden he's not going to do that with Kamala Harris.
I don't know.
So I said I want change.
Sure,
I want a woman.
fine.
I
That's
want
weird.
a woman. I want a woman to run the country. We've had men running the country for how long?
Well,
Forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guess what? I'm voting strictly on the fact that she's a woman.
See, I'm not into that identity stuff.
Well, that's okay. I mean, listen, when Trump ran for office, people said, I vote for him because he's not a politician,
Right.
right? So I'm tying my vote to the fact that the change that's going to happen is we're going to have a woman run the country.
Ugh. Okay.
Ugh.
Well, it's nothing about the woman thing. It's about that. That's why people are voting for her. I don't like that.
Why? They voted for
I like
Trump
Kamala because
he
I want Medicare for all, or I want that $25,000 for a down payment on my house, or I want the continued foreign policy that we're currently doing under Joe Biden, because those are all things that are going to happen. If you said any of those things, I'd say, okay, that's a reason. That's fine. But and because she's a woman, I don't know. If you say I'm voting for Trump because he's a man, you're sexist, right?
Not me.
Okay. Well, I see that both ways way too often.
You mean it's also like when I say stay black, and people say, what if I say stay white? Would you be offended? No, I wouldn't be offended.
I'm going to try it.
Well, you should.
I just looking to get canceled over here.
As long as it's a point of positivity, Tony, you should get T-shirts that say "Stay White," and I'd actually wear one.
No, I don't want to get canceled.
All right,
yet.
we got to go to break here. When we come back, more with Tony Gehrig. Welcome back to Talk of the Town with Jon Adams. Before we continue, I just want to acknowledge that this is September 11th and that we need to remember the people that lost their lives as well as the people that fought for our country. You know, the first responders and the people that helped us get us back to where we needed to be and help New York recover, as well as the families and the victims. You know, it's interesting that that wasn't one of the first things that I thought of, you know? I mean, that to me was the most tragic time in our history, modern history, and here it is. How many years later?
23.
And it wasn't in the forefront of my brain. And so it's interesting because the second part of that is we were never more American than the first few years after 9/11.
There were a lot of flags on cars. I'll tell you
Yes, yes, and we were united. We were one people, and it didn't matter which side of the aisle you were on. We were all united in one common goal, and you know, that's the America that I remember. And then you contrast that with what we have today.
Yep.
So I just wanted to mention, you know, we need to remember the victims of 9/11 as well as the people that served in the military and the first responders and everybody that was involved that helped us become a strong nation again.
John, I turned in my draft card 9 days before 9/11. So I turned 18 9 days before 9/11. Turned in my draft card, then that happened. And then I joined 7 months later after that.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. I've said that I don't think that our veterans or our military people, just like our law enforcement, get enough praise. I don't think you guys get enough support because, like I said, for me, I don't think I could go into the military.
Yeah, it's definitely a different lifestyle, that's for sure.
I told my kids this: if you go into the military, you're part of the war machine. Okay, and we have wars every 5 or 6 years. We have something going on, and you know that at some point you might be in harm's way. You know, the only other profession that you know that is going to happen is law enforcement. You know, so I hold both professions in high regard. So we're going to pivot a little bit because we got a lot to give to. We got a lot to get to.
Yeah, we do.
And I watched the debate.
Yep.
You know,
So did I.
And for me, I came away disappointed because there wasn't anything of substance.
Very little.
You know, I mean, I wanted to hear. You know, when the immigration topic came up, you know, you didn't do enough about immigration. I tried to do something about immigration, but you told your minions not to, not to. And it's like, okay, enough of that.
Right.
I want to hear what you're going to do right now.
Yeah, it should have been, if I were Trump, I would have said, I'm going to continue with the wall. I'm going to hire more folks at the border, maybe the National Guard, or whatever he wants to do, whatever he wants to say. But yeah, give me those 3 steps. And I want to hear Kamala say, I would do this instead. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep. Just like
they just couldn't help themselves, you know?
And we should want better for our people that are going to be running this country. You know, and the moderators, I thought the moderators were terrible.
There were 3 instances in particular when I was watching when they actually stopped and said, well, actually, and I was like, ooh, like you can't do that.
Right.
It's up to us, the people listening, to decide what's true and what's not, you know?
Right. And it's like, come on, man. Let the people have the information and let it go from there. Big Game James says that we have Grant on the line. Grant, thanks for holding. Are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Hey, Grant, how are you today?
Good. Thanks for taking my call. I know you said you were going to vote for Kamala Harris, but I'm from North Dakota, and you talk about what she said, where we're producing more oil ever than before in the United States. Well, I'm from North Dakota. I have friends that work in the Western and that are getting royalty checks are down 75 to 80%. They're not fracking wells. They're actually capping wells on a record pace in North Dakota. And if you talk about Governor Walz, he's the one that changed the laws where they're not accepting the coal electricity from Great River Energy, almost causing 300 lost jobs in western North Dakota. And thank God Lauren Kopsing and Rainbow Gas bought them and saved that mine. Otherwise, 300 jobs have been gone out of North Dakota. So if you're from North Dakota or Minnesota, you can't vote for Harris. You just can't. Just for that one reason alone. That's my intake on it.
Well, first of all, I thank you for calling in, and this is what this show is about, right? It's about talking about what affects you, you know? And so I've said it before, the things that affect me are different than affect somebody else. So the things that I care about, Kamala Harris is strong on, okay? And at the top of the list is taking care of the United States, taking care of the people of the United States, okay? Now, we can look at businesses lost and gained, and it's funny because the statistics are such that right now they say that Biden's economy is doing well now in spite of inflation. You look at the jobs numbers, are not what they said they were, but they're about average. And so my biggest contention is we need change. We need a new direction. And so I said I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she's a woman, correct?
You did say that.
And so that's my view on it.
That's fine.
And so that's the beauty of the United States is most people don't have to espouse their view or put it out there. Grant, I want to thank you for calling in. So
You betcha. Good job,
here's
guys.
the thing: is now I heard a gentleman talk about North Dakota losing 300 jobs, and then I looked at the number of manufacturing jobs that didn't come back under Biden or under Trump.
Sure.
So here we have a government, and I've said this before. Okay, it doesn't matter who gets in office; they're going to do what they're going to do, and we have to pick the lesser of two evils. And for me, I don't see that Donald Trump is the way to go.
So the lesser of two evils, I kind of like that because oftentimes when we talk about policies and the left versus right or whatever, this policy versus that policy, for me the lesser of two evils is to not have the government overreact, right? So when people say they want Kamala to come in and take care of the Americans, right, that scares me pretty dramatically because whenever the government comes here, they do it ham-fistedly. They do it with a big, strong arm and a big hand on the scale. They go, we're going to help this guy, and then there's always a counterbalance, There's always there's the other side of that coin, and for every action, there's a reaction, So if you want to help manufacturing, you put your big arm on the scale and help manufacturing, that means you're taking away some sort of resources from somewhere else.
Well, I think the big thing that we have with IC when Democrats is the regulations.
Yeah.
The way that they come in and they want to regulate everything. I think that there's a place for it.
Sure.
But like you said, it does get overblown.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you look at it, there are a lot of people that are losing their jobs and big businesses making record profits.
Right. Well, that's the funny thing, John, is a lot of these regulations are asked for by the big companies because the big companies can handle it.
Right.
They know that if you put in this big policy, it's going to be very expensive for the little guy to try to keep up with that policy. Whereas they have a team of lawyers already doing that policy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Amazon, Walmart, those guys don't care. They want more. They want more stuff. They want more policies from the government coming out because they know it's going to harm the mom and pops on the corner selling the same thing that they're selling, but they can sell it for cheaper.
Well, my theory on Walmart. It is the government superstore.
Yeah.
I mean, I people say, well, it's not a monopoly. How can it not be? It goes into cities and drives out and kills small business. And if it's not thriving, look at what happened in Moorhead. Yeah. They built that Walmart in Moorhead. Sure. Most of the small businesses were affected by it. It didn't make enough money. They closed it.
There's a lot of subsidy that happens.
And all those jobs went away too. That's a big thing like Amazon. Oh, we're going to have this many jobs come in. But if it's a failure, they're going to create that vacuum, and then we're left holding the bag. So we're going to move on. We might as well get into it. So I had Commissioner Pepcorn on the show. We're already at 11:30.
I know.
And we haven't even gotten into it. And so I wanted you to come on the show because I asked him some pretty pointed questions, and I will give him credit. He didn't shy away from any of his answers. But at the same time, there were things that he said that later on when I looked at it, I just wasn't happy with the response. Yeah. So I'm going to start with DEI. Okay. Okay. And I said in the beginning, I'm not for DEI if it's poorly implemented, poorly funded, and poorly staffed. Yep. All of those things happen. Yep. Commissioner Pepcorn said he felt like DEI was set up to fail. Now, that wasn't on radio, and this is a quote. He said that, and so in my head, if I'm a commissioner, why aren't I saying those things?
You should. I mean, if that's what you think, and especially if you're someone who wants to get rid of it, which he does, right? Then you should say that. It was never going to work because we didn't put the proper resources into it. Therefore, why are we still doing it, right? If that's what you believe, that should be said. Right. I do believe that it was, again, ham-fisted the way they did it. They wanted to get something on the table and say, hey, we're doing something. Yeah. So they hired a guy, qualified or not. I think you think he is. But then they didn't give him an assistant for a year. They gave him a shoestring budget, and they said, go fix it.
Right, and they didn't even know what they wanted to fix. They said, that came out after the first year. Already, Big Game James says we're up against the break. You're going to have to come on for a couple different times. We're not even going to get close to what we need to get done. But anyway, we'll see you on the other end of the break. If you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000.
There we go.
Hey,
No
welcome
buffer.
back to Talk to Town with Jon Adams on WDAY Radio.
There we go. We got it. Better late than never.
There was just a little dead air, but we were going over our show notes, and so
That's my fault.
You know,
My bad.
first of all, this has been a great half hour. We're almost over, and we haven't even got to some of the things I want to talk about.
Your
So-
questions here.
So here, last week I had, like I said, I had Commissioner Popcorn on, and the overriding thing that really bothered me is there weren't a whole lot of solutions.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pointing fingers. There was a lot of I've been outvoted for any number of years. You've been on the city commission for 15 years, and so I asked about what I said legislation. I don't even know if that's the right word.
It's fair. I mean, it's
And
ordinances.
so I asked, and there weren't many solutions to the problem facing
Yeah,
Fargo, like DEI.
sure.
When I said, okay, so you disband DEI, what's going to happen to, Dr. Hogan did a lot of outreach, and in the minority community, we were really happy with what he'd done. I talked to veterans that he had gone and worked with
Sure.
on their behalf. They are very distraught over the fact that they're not going to have that voice in
Sure.
government.
Yep. So I think in a lot of cases, government isn't the best vehicle to fix certain problems, and we can obviously disagree on that. But there are certain issues like homelessness or like DEI and other things where the city of Fargo should be a touch point, should be a place where we have a list of resources from the private sector, from the nonprofit sector, to say, okay, you're having an issue, you came to the city of Fargo to ask for help. Here are the 3 organizations we recommend that you go talk to about that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, there are people who have drug problems, alcohol problems, mental health problems. We as the government can't fix you, right? There are organizations that do those things. If we try to, we can try to fix you, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So the more services you have, the more diluted the mission gets, and then we become everything to everybody, and then there's no more money. So we have to be very disciplined in what we enact, and we have to be very pointed in what that mission is. And like for your DEI, for example, I think a lot of people aren't on board because they don't know what the mission is. Terry Hogan didn't know what the mission was when he got there because they never told him what the mission was.
Right.
Now, whose fault is that? That's everybody's fault. Everyone who hired him, all the people who voted for it, all the people who didn't man it properly and didn't fund it properly, that's their fault. That's the commission's fault, right? And honestly, to some extent, it's Terry Hogan's fault because when he came in and got hired, he was very excited about it, but he didn't have a rudder. He didn't know where he was going. He should have demanded one and walked into that office and said, what am I supposed to be doing here?
Well, that's one of the issues that I have is that, he was painted as not having a rudder. And I said before that he did a climate assessment and an environmental scan, both which are the cornerstone of DEI. And what it does is it gives you a jumping off point as to, are you in the right position to maximize whether it's a business, in this case it's the city government.
Yep.
And where your needs and where your weak points are, where your strengths are. He did that for one department.
Yeah.
It should have been done for the entire city.
Well, but you remember the presentation he gave, right? And how underwhelming it was for people when they saw it. And that's what started this whole conversation about should we keep this division.
Well, here's the sad part. He gave that presentation. All the information that he gave was available 6 months before that meeting.
Yeah.
So the commissioners had, and this is part of the problem. The commissioners had that information.
Sure.
But they made it seem like he hadn't done anything.
Right.
So then here we're sitting here and everybody's saying it's underwhelming, it's this, it's that. Well, where does that land?
Yeah.
And for me, I was disappointed because they said, where are the results? And every day people are calling me, particularly when they started talking about that they were going to cancel DEI.
Yeah.
I get phone calls every day. What do we need to do? You ask some of the city leaders, the mayors, commissioners have received letters, phone calls about the disappointing handling of DEI.
Yeah.
And I think part of our problem is it seems like there's a disconnect between our city commission and all of our citizens.
No, that could be.
Okay? Not could be. It is. Okay? Some people are heard, some people aren't. My problem is I've tried to get commissioners on this show. I've tried to get the mayor on the show. And it's like Commissioner Pepcorn said, oh, you could just email or call me anytime. Well, you know what? It took me close to 4 months to get him on the show. And so if I know what levers to pull and I'm having a hard time getting a commissioner's attention, imagine an ordinary citizen or an immigrant or somebody who's not as adept at moving
Yeah.
within city government.
It is unfortunate. It is doable. I mean, there's an extent where there's too much information, right? If you go on the city website, it's very hard to find certain things because there's so much information on there. It's just a sea of words. You know what I mean?
Right.
At 23 years old, I was able to get on the commission and speak to the mayor and the commissioners about a road issue I was having in front of my house. So it is doable. Am I saying it's easy? Not necessarily, and it's only gotten more complicated with more information out there, of course.
Yeah, well, that speaks to our communications department.
Yay!
I mean, So one of the things was I looked at salaries.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
they are very well compensated.
Yep.
So
this is all public information.
Yes,
so they start
yes.
out about 70, 75 grand. That's their first year. And it goes up to 100, 110, 115,000 for the top folks. And that's over a span of about 10 years.
Right.
That's a very good wage in the city of Fargo.
That is an outstanding wage.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I need to go to school and get a communications degree.
No, you don't.
Of course.
No, you don't.
So along those lines, the other thing we're talking about is the engagement center.
Okay.
And my problem with the city commission is that we have these things that they do.
Yep.
And then they go, oops.
That-
And then the money is already spent.
That's why at the time I said no to it, because the money was offered by the feds and by the state. Or if you want to say it even more precisely, the feds gave the state money and then the state gave money to the cities to do certain things, right?
Right.
This is one of those things. So it was funded. It was funded not by us.
Right.
We had a lot of money, okay? Then the money goes away. Pandemic goes away, money goes away. Emergency goes away, the money goes away. So who pays for it? Well, of course, the city does. If they want to keep it, they have to
Right.
pay for it. So there's a couple of things with that. One, if we want to keep it, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. What I'm telling you is we can't right now with the fundings that we have now.
Right.
We can't. It's not on. It's unaffordable. We can't do it. It's not a question of if we should or if we shouldn't. We can't. Therefore, if we want it, the state has to pay for it, and they know they have to pay for it. This is not a city problem. People are being bussed in from other cities to Fargo because we're the ones that have the resources, and everyone knows that. It's just like Minneapolis. It's just like Seattle. It's just like L.A. Why are there so many homeless people there? Because they're the ones with the resources, not the tiny towns around them, right? So if we want this thing, the state has to pay for it. The second question is, or another question is, where does it go? People are saying, let's get it out of downtown because downtown is so nice.
Yeah.
Well, you've built a downtown around the area where all the services are. So
Right,
now you want to move it.
Well, look at where the health services building is.
With the what?
You know, the public health service
yes.
building.
Yeah,
And my contention is this: we have a legacy fund.
we
Right?
do.
Easily, a legacy fund could address this
Oh, for
problem.
sure.
And as a commissioner, I would think, how can I tap into that?
Yes.
But have you ever read the legacy fund?
I guess sort of.
Yeah. Well, it's set up so it ain't like you could just go in and ask for money.
Of course.
Okay, and it's set up to benefit business more than anything else.
Yeah,
When the funding, yeah. But here's our issue.
Yeah.
We could easily just take 1% of the legacy fund, and most of the city issues, whether it's Bismarck, whether it's Fargo small town, we could easily alleviate the things that we're nitpicking about.
Right.
And now we're meeting the needs of everybody in the community.
So when people say the legacy fund, and I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is when people say, well, how do we pay for the legacy fund? We don't even need to talk about the legacy fund. The state has money, right?
Mm-hmm.
More money than just the legacy fund. We bring in more money every single year. There are sales taxes. There are other taxes that they collect other than oil tax. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And income tax. You pay it, I pay it, everyone pays it, right?
Right.
So we don't need to tap into anything. Budget it. You know what I mean? Just put it in the budget.
Right.
And pay for it through the general fund, like we do for everything else.
Yeah, but right now, the city is over budget. We're cutting the communications department. We're cutting the health.
No, I'm talking about the state. The state.
Okay.
but-
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, it's my contention that Bismarck doesn't really care about Fargo.
They better start caring because
No?
the mental health crisis is really hitting hard.
Well, look, I've talked to politicians on the western side of the state,
Sure.
and it seems like it's two different worlds.
Oh, it definitely is.
Okay.
Two different time zones.
And it's like, how in the world, with all of this money? I mean, because the problems that are visited on us,
Yep.
they had the same problems happen when we had the oil boom.
Yep.
And
Right.
you know that they took care of theirs.
Sure.
But yet we're out here on an island servicing people for the whole state, funding it with our local budget.
I've got good news for you, though. We are the biggest city by far. We're the biggest region by far. If you add Grand Forks, Wahpeton, and up and down the Red River Valley here, we have some representatives. You know what I mean? We have a lot of them, you know?
Well,
because we are the population center. So they got to start voting the right way.
Well, we need to start voting the right way, and we need to take some of that money and first of all, do the things that we need to do so that people stay here.
Yep.
This is a vibrant community. You know, we talk about crime, we talk about the needs of law enforcement, you know, keeping our community safe. We need to come up off some dollars.
Yep.
And the question is, how do we get our politicians to see this? You know, and I've been preaching that we get what we get because we're apathetic when it comes to elections.
I've said it's your fault for this to the voters so many times.
Speaking of elections, Tony, I've gotten to know Tony over the past year, and I think you got a good heart, man.
Oh, thanks.
And I think you should get back on the city commission. You know, I really do. I think that you would be an asset. I think that your head is in the right place. It seems for the most part, you know, you can look at things and be objective on most things.
Sure.
I mean, there are things that Tony and I go back and forth. We have epic discussions, but that's the great thing is that we're able to have dialogue. And they're 30% of the time we don't agree and we butt heads. But that's the point. We should be talking about these things. Why are people so scared of conversation? So Big Game James says we're already up against the break. So if you want to call in, the phone number is 701-293-9000, or you can email studio@wdayoradionow.com.
Boom.
Ooh. Oh my goodness! Big Game James comes in
Just
strong
vibing.
on the wheels of steel.
Just vibing on this one.
So unfortunately, we haven't been able to hit all the topics
No, we
that
did
I want
not.
to hit, and I think I may have to borrow Tony, and we may just have to have a Tony and John segment added to Talk of the Town because I've enjoyed our time together. But of the 60 million things that we have on our outline,
I'll keep the sheet. We'll do it again another
covered
time.
3. But the engagement center.
No.
And so one of the things that I talk about is I think that our churches are underutilized. Okay, I did a little research, and what I did was I went and I looked at what outreaches various churches have in the community, and I didn't see any that provided homeless accessibility.
Yeah.
You know, that those type of services. And so with the elimination of the engagement center, obviously they can't do anything with drug outreach, although a lot of them do have AA meetings and stuff like that. Counseling services, things like that. If the engagement center goes away, and if there's anybody that your church has those sort of programs, please call into the show. but somebody has to pick up the slack with
Sure.
the engagement center going away.
Yep. So churches is a common one people look to right away because they're known to have a charitable wing of
Right.
what they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a natural thing for a church. There are organizations that churches give their money to as well in charitable fashion to take care of some of these things. There are wraparound services in the state or in the city of Fargo that are all basically not for profits.
Right. Right.
So duplication of effort, yada yada. There's organizations that work together. There's probably one that has 15 different. I'm just spitballing here.
Right.
15 different organizations that work together and be that touch point to say, okay, I can help you with this and this, and they can help you with this and that over there, right? And I think churches are part of that network. They don't necessarily house the homeless. They don't necessarily feed the homeless necessarily. I'm sure some do, but I think that's more their place is to be a touch point for those folks.
I would like to see it more than a touch point, simply because we have, I mean, aside from the land that churches sit on, which is tax money, and they're not taxed. I mean,
Tax free, correct?
Think about that.
Yeah.
But also buildings. I mean, all of that. And now that Churches United is on hard times, so to speak, that was the one entity that you could clearly point at and say that they're doing the type of outreach that I mentioned. So it's like, between the Engagement Center and Churches United falling on hard times, is the commission creating a situation that's going to get worse before it gets better?
Like I said before, this engagement center is not sustainable for the city of Fargo to pay for. So it's going to get worse if it goes away.
Well,
I agree with you.
So my contention is if we used our money differently,
okay,
and we didn't get to budgeting, but I think that, and we've talked about parking ramps.
Yeah,
we've talked about what was the thing they wanted to build, the convention center.
Yeah, convention center, the dome, remodel, all that.
I see a lot of economic development coming out of the city commission, but it's like they're spending money that in the end is going to cost taxpayers.
Right. So we have what's known as an Arts and Social Services Fund in the city of Fargo. It's about $800,000, probably more by now, that we put in to the city. I always vote against it. Did vote against it because I don't believe the city of Fargo is a charity. My grandma, your grandma, whoever is in your family, the elderly people in your family, they don't pay their property taxes so that the city of Fargo can turn around and give to their favorite charity. I don't think that's the way the tax dollar should be used. My grandma's on hard times, right? She's having a hard time paying for her apartment, paying for food, paying for her medicine. This is hypothetical, by the way. I don't want her to pay taxes to the city commission. And then the city commission goes, well, you know what? My favorite charity is over here, and mine's over here. Right. Well, I have an autistic nephew, and that's real. When I give to charities, that's one of my favorite charities to give to here in the city of Fargo.
Right.
The city of Fargo does not give to that charity through the Arts and Social Services Fund. They give to the YWCA, a great organization. They give to other things for the homeless, and great organizations.
Right.
But I don't want you to take my dollar, give it to somebody else, and say I'm doing charity. To me, that's not charity.
Well, first of all, just like the votes is coming up with taxes.
Yep.
I think that first of all, our commissioners need to be bringing legislation that people want. And I think it's funny because Commissioner Pepcorn voted against law enforcement and the fire department brought forth that tax plan. Right. And he voted against it.
Yep.
I'm excited to see what the voters are going to say about it.
Yep.
Because we talk about protecting our city.
Yep.
Now here's the linchpin of that situation. Suppose it passes.
Yeah.
Right? In my head, are the citizens going to think, okay, we just passed this tax, so then we shouldn't see the city taking as much money for fire and rescue and all that. That's like
right.
And so then the second part is planning better, spending our money better. And it's a point where I don't think people are involved enough to know. And have you? Well, you've looked at the city budget.
I have, and I cut out. It took me 15 minutes. I sat down with it, and I cut out probably $3 million in 15 minutes. Now that was just me looking at it for a very short period of time, just on a break somewhere, right? So it's not that hard. It's not impossible to do. But the prioritization is what I think is what you're saying overall. We're not prioritizing the right things. We should never have a shortfall for police and fire. Okay? There should be a shortfall for the planning department or the roads department or something like that, because that's not as important to the people of Fargo as having a cop on the street or putting a fire out when your car starts on fire. You know what I mean? So when they say we have a shortfall for police and fire, I say, no, you don't. You have a shortfall for the roads. Okay? Now, if you want to raise taxes for roads, tell me. and we talk about that. But don't tell me we need to raise taxes for police and fire.
Well, and so I was a big fan of, hey, why are you cutting the COLA down to 3.5%?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've now changed my position. Okay? I've changed my position because looking at
The wages?
yes. I'm like, holy cow.
Yes.
And so here I'm clearly, I'm railing on Pepcorn, and he was right.
Yep.
He was right. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute. Well, all right, so why, if I could see that as a guy who has a fourth grade education, how are our commissioners so blind on this?
People in Fargo are still under the impression that people who work for the government are underpaid with good benefits. That's what it used to be. People who worked for the government used to be underpaid and had excellent benefits and a retirement that was defined. You get this much a month for the rest of your life. Okay.
Right.
Now they're paid just like everybody else. They have excellent benefits that we pay for, and they get a retirement at the end of the day for a defined amount of money. That's ludicrous, and it's not sustainable. We have to change something about that. And the COLA never should be across the board 3% or across the board 4%. You should say, hey, the lower end gets this much, the higher end gets this much, and it should be a different amount.
Tony, I want to thank you for coming on the show. I am definitely going to have Tony back on the show. This has been a very fun hour for me. I enjoyed my time. Hey, everybody, have a great week. Skol Vikings, go Bison, and hopefully the Gophers can keep their winning ways. This has been Jon Adams for Talk of the Town. Have a great week, and as always, stay black.